There is a phrase spreading across Southeast Asia that quietly humiliates thousands of foreigners the moment they hear it. Losers back home. LBH. At first, it sounds cruel, arrogant, dismissive. But the reason this phrase became popular is deeply uncomfortable. Because millions of people are no longer leaving Western countries for adventure. They are leaving because they no longer believe they can survive emotionally, financially, or psychologically where they came from. A 32-year-old man sits inside a tiny Los Angeles apartment realizing that despite doing everything society told him to do, he still cannot afford the life his parents built on one income. A woman in London spends her mornings packed inside crowded trains, staring at strangers equally exhausted, wondering how life became this emotionally heavy despite everyone pretending this is normal. A burned-out remote worker lands in Vietnam for the first time, drinks coffee beside the beach in Da Nang, and suddenly realizes this is the calmest their nervous system has felt in years. And that is why this conversation has exploded online. Because beneath the memes, the insults, and the controversy, something much bigger is happening. Millions of people are quietly questioning whether the modern version of success is making them happier at all. And places like Vietnam, Bali, Thailand, Lisbon, and Mexico City have become symbols of escape for people emotionally exhausted by the societies they came from. But underneath this entire conversation is a deeper question almost nobody wants to answer honestly. When people leave their country searching for peace, freedom, affordability, connection, or dignity, are they escaping a broken system? Or escaping themselves? The term "losers back home" did not appear randomly. It emerged from patterns locals and long-term expats began observing in places across Southeast Asia and Latin America. Foreigners from wealthy countries were arriving in cities where their money suddenly gave them a dramatically different quality of life. A man struggling financially in California suddenly rents a modern apartment near the beach in Da Nang for a fraction of what he paid back home. Someone emotionally burned out in New York suddenly spends afternoons working from quiet cafes in Vietnam while paying less for an entire month of living expenses than they once paid for a week of survival in the United States. And emotionally, the contrast can feel overwhelming. In the original transcript, the narrator explains that living in Los Angeles created constant stress because every moment outside the house felt expensive, while Da Nang created feelings of peace, abundance, and emotional freedom instead. That emotional shift is becoming increasingly common among millennials and Gen Z workers who feel trapped by rising housing costs, debt, burnout, loneliness, and hyper-competitive work cultures in major Western cities. But online conversations around LBH became controversial because critics argue that some foreigners only become socially or financially successful abroad because they are benefiting from economic inequality and currency advantages. The phrase is often directed toward people who failed to build confidence, relationships, or status back home, but suddenly reinvent themselves overseas. And sometimes the criticism is not entirely unfair. There are foreigners who arrive in poorer countries behaving arrogantly, exploiting locals, romanticizing poverty, or treating entire cultures like personal escape fantasies. But the internet often reduces complicated human stories into shallow stereotypes. The reality is that many people relocating abroad are not wealthy elites or manipulative opportunists. Many are emotionally exhausted workers trying to build a sustainable life after years of psychological pressure. The rise of remote work accelerated this dramatically after the pandemic. Millions suddenly realized they no longer needed to physically remain inside expensive cities to keep earning income. And once some experienced slower lifestyles, lower costs, stronger social life, and reduced stress abroad, returning home began feeling emotionally unbearable. Because for many people, this migration is not really about luxury. It is about relief. What makes this conversation emotionally explosive is that both sides often feel justified at the same time. Many foreigners arriving in places like Vietnam genuinely feel like they finally discovered the life they were promised growing up, a life where survival does not require constant psychological exhaustion. In the transcript, the narrator describes Da Nang as one of the few places that recreated what the American dream was supposed to feel like: peace, comfort, abundance, and freedom. And that statement reveals something much deeper psychologically. Increasingly, younger generations no longer believe the traditional system guarantees stability. Home ownership feels unreachable. Burnout is normalized. Healthcare creates fear. Loneliness is rising. Many people work harder than ever while feeling emotionally emptier than ever. And eventually some begin questioning whether the environment they grew up in is psychologically sustainable at all. But while foreigners experience relief, locals often experience something very different. As expats and digital nomads arrive with stronger currencies, rents increase rapidly. Entire neighborhoods begin slowly changing. Cafes, gyms, restaurants, and apartment markets start catering toward foreigners instead of local residents. The transcript describes how housing prices in Da Nang surged dramatically between 2023 and 2025, with locals and long-term residents increasingly priced out of beachside areas. Similar patterns already happened in Bali, Lisbon, and Mexico City, where digital nomad migration contributed to gentrification and rising living costs. And this is where the emotional tension becomes difficult. Foreigners feel like they are escaping economic pressure. Locals begin feeling economic pressure because of the foreigners arriving. Both experiences are real simultaneously. That is why conversations around LBH often become emotionally charged online. The phrase touches deeper insecurities surrounding status, masculinity, loneliness, globalization, dating dynamics, and economic decline in the modern West. Some critics argue certain foreigners only became socially successful because they entered environments where economic inequality suddenly worked in their favor. But others reject this entirely, arguing they are simply participating in the same global mobility wealthy corporations and investors have used for decades. And beneath all these arguments is one uncomfortable reality: millions of people are no longer searching only for money anymore. They are searching for emotional sustainability. A life where basic existence does not constantly feel like psychological warfare. What attracts many foreigners to places like Vietnam is not only affordability. It is emotional atmosphere. In the transcript, locals describe Da Nang as a calmer city where people are less obsessed with endless competition and more focused on enjoying life. That difference matters more psychologically than many people realize. Modern Western societies often reward hyperproductivity, career obsession, emotional suppression, and constant comparison. Over time, many people internalize the belief that their worth depends entirely on achievement. And eventually, they become emotionally exhausted without fully understanding why. A man works 60 hours a week while quietly losing the ability to enjoy anything. A woman spends years chasing professional success while her nervous system remains permanently anxious. Someone earns more money than ever before, yet feels emotionally disconnected from life itself. In contrast, many expats describe feeling human again in slower-paced environments abroad. They spend evenings walking outside instead of sitting in traffic. They drink coffee beside the ocean instead of staring at office walls under fluorescent lights. They suddenly realize their entire nervous system had been operating in survival mode for years. And that emotional relief can feel life-changing. But this creates another danger: romanticization. Every country has problems. Vietnam has visa complications, language barriers, infrastructure limitations, censorship concerns, economic inequality, and rising housing tensions caused partly by foreign demand. The transcript itself acknowledges issues like visa runs, rapid development, and increasing rent prices. Yet emotional relief can be intoxicating after years of stress, causing some people to idealize their new environment while demonizing the place they left behind. This happens repeatedly throughout history whenever people migrate searching for a better life. The emotional contrast between old suffering and new possibility creates powerful psychological projection. But eventually reality catches up everywhere. And this is where the conversation becomes deeply personal. Because moving abroad can dramatically improve someone's environment, but it cannot automatically heal unresolved emotional wounds internally. A deeply insecure person in America often remains insecure in Vietnam. Someone emotionally avoidant in London often remains emotionally avoidant in Bali. Geography can reduce stress. It can improve quality of life. It can create breathing room. But external freedom alone does not automatically create internal peace. And many people eventually discover that the hardest thing to escape is not their country. It is themselves. The rise of digital nomadism and global migration is revealing something profound about modern society. Millions of people are quietly questioning the systems, lifestyles, and definitions of success they were taught growing up. They are beginning to ask whether endless productivity, financial anxiety, social isolation, and emotional burnout are really the price human beings are supposed to pay for modern life. And that question is reshaping cities all over the world. Places like Da Nang, Bali, Chiang Mai, Lisbon, and Medellin are becoming symbols of something larger than tourism. They represent a growing global search for emotional sustainability. But these migrations also force difficult conversations about privilege, inequality, and responsibility. Foreigners arriving with stronger currencies can unintentionally reshape local economies in ways that benefit some people while displacing others. Governments encourage foreign investment and tourism because it boosts economic growth, as shown in the transcript regarding Da Nang's long-term investments to attract international visitors. Yet rapid growth can also slowly transform cities into places locals can no longer comfortably afford. This tension will likely increase worldwide as remote work expands and housing affordability worsens across developed countries. And perhaps that is why the phrase, "losers back home," survives online. Not because it is accurate, but because it emotionally provokes people. Some hear the phrase and feel judged. Others hear it and recognize uncomfortable truths about modern society, loneliness, and economic decline. But reducing millions of human beings into one insulting label ignores the deeper reality underneath all of this. Many people leaving their countries are not searching for superiority. They are searching for relief. Relief from stress. Relief from burnout. Relief from emotional exhaustion. Relief from systems that no longer feel human to them anymore. And maybe the most important thing hidden inside this entire conversation is not whether someone moves abroad or stays home. It is the realization that modern life is producing enormous numbers of emotionally exhausted people searching for places, physically or psychologically, where they can finally breathe again. The conversation around "losers back home" is not really about one insult. It is about millions of people quietly realizing that success without peace no longer feels meaningful. Some are leaving their countries searching for affordability. Some are searching for calmness. Some are searching for belonging. And some are simply searching for a version of life that no longer feels emotionally unbearable. But no matter where someone moves, one truth remains the same. Changing your environment can absolutely transform your quality of life. But lasting peace still depends on what happens inside your own mind. Because eventually, every person must confront the same question. Are you building a life that actually feels human to live?